Imagine being abandoned by the very people you trusted the most. One moment, you're riding along with your family, your tail wagging, feeling safe and happy. The next moment, they're gone. The car disappears into the distance, leaving you alone, confused and terrified. This is the heartbreaking story of a dog who was left behind at a gas station, his fate uncertain, until something incredible happened. Stay till the end, because what unfolds next will leave you speechless. The late afternoon sun stretched across the sky, painting the horizon with streaks of orange and pink. A quiet gas station sat by the side of a long, endless highway. Cars rolled in and out, filling their tanks before disappearing down the road. Among them was a silver sedan, its tires crunching against the pavement as it pulled up next to a pump. Inside the car, a golden retriever sat in the back seat, his tongue hanging out, his eyes bright with excitement. He loved car rides, the wind in his fur, the ever-changing scenery. It felt like an adventure every time. But today felt a little different. Something about the atmosphere inside the car was off. The voices of his owners weren't as cheerful as usual. The warmth that once filled the space had faded. The door opened, and a man stepped out, stretching his arms. The woman in the passenger seat followed, adjusting her sunglasses. The retriever's tail thumped against the seat, eager to follow them. Then, the door opened for him. His paws hit the pavement, and he gave a happy shake, fluffing out his golden fur. He sniffed the ground, his tail wagging as he took in the new smells: oil, gasoline, food scraps left behind by passing travelers. His owners walked toward the store, their voices drifting away as they disappeared inside. The retriever didn't mind. He was used to waiting. He sat down near the car, watching the people around him. A truck rumbled to a stop nearby, a family stepping out with two laughing kids. A biker adjusted his helmet before speeding off. The retriever let out a small yawn and laid down, his head resting on his paws. Minutes passed. Then, something changed. The car's engine roared to life. The retriever lifted his head, ears perked up. His tail gave a small wag. Were they coming back? But instead of stopping, the car rolled forward. The retriever scrambled to his feet, his heart suddenly racing. He took a few steps toward the vehicle, his nails clicking against the pavement. His tail wagged uncertainly. This had to be a mistake. Then, the car picked up speed. Confusion clouded his amber eyes. He took off after them, his paws pounding against the ground, his breath coming in desperate pants. His world spun into chaos. They wouldn't leave him. They couldn't. But the silver sedan didn't slow down. The retriever pushed himself harder, his legs burning as he tried to catch up. His heart pounded in his chest, his ears flattened against his head. Then, the car disappeared over the hill. The retriever came to a staggering stop, his body trembling. He stared at the empty road ahead, his chest rising and falling rapidly. His tail hung limp behind him. His ears drooped. They were gone. He turned back toward the gas station, his legs feeling heavier with every step. The excitement, the joy, the trust, it had all been ripped away in a matter of moments. For the first time in his life, he was truly alone. The golden retriever stood frozen near the edge of the road, his eyes still locked on the horizon where the silver sedan had disappeared. His chest rose and fell with uneven breaths, his heart pounding from the chase. But they weren't coming back. They were really gone. Slowly, he turned and walked back toward the gas station, his legs feeling heavier with every step. His tail hung low, dragging slightly as he moved. He had always trusted his owners, always believed they would be there for him. But now, He wasn't so sure. The gas station bustled with activity. Cars pulled in and out, their doors slamming, engines humming, people chatting as they filled their tanks. The retriever looked around, searching every face, every vehicle. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe they'd realized he was missing and were turning around right now. So he sat down, and he waited. Minutes turned into hours. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the pavement. The retriever's ears perked up every time he saw a silver car approach, his heart leaping in hope, only for it to sink again when he realized it wasn't them. The gas station workers noticed him sitting there, his golden fur slightly dusty from the ground. A kind-looking man in a blue uniform stepped outside, wiping his hands on a rag. He crouched down near the retriever, his voice soft. "Hey, buddy, are you lost?" The retriever blinked up at him, but didn't move. He didn't understand the words, but he understood the kindness in the man's tone. Still, he didn't budge. He had to stay. His family would come back for him. They had to. The man sighed and stood up, disappearing inside the store. A moment later, he returned with a small plastic bowl of water. He set it down gently near the dog and backed away. The retriever hesitated, then slowly leaned forward, taking a few cautious laps. The cool water soothed his dry throat, but it didn't ease the ache in his chest. The hours stretched on. People came and went. Some noticed him, others didn't. A little girl tugged on her mother's sleeve, pointing at him. "Mummy, is that dog okay?" "I don't know, sweetheart," her mother replied, glancing at the retriever with concern before ushering her daughter into their car. As the last rays of sunlight faded into twilight, the gas station quieted. The retriever curled up near the entrance, tucking his nose under his tail to keep warm. He had never spent a night alone before. The darkness felt different, without the safety of home, without the familiar sounds of his family moving around. A distant howl echoed from the woods nearby. The retriever lifted his head, his ears twitching. Every rustling leaf, every distant car engine made his heart jump. He had always felt safe before, but now he felt small, exposed, forgotten. But even as exhaustion crept into his bones, he refused to leave. His family was coming back. They had to. Morning arrived slowly, painting the sky in soft hues of pink and gold. The first few cars of the day pulled into the gas station, their drivers yawning as they filled their tanks. The golden retriever lifted his head, blinking groggily. His body ached from sleeping on the cold pavement, but that didn't matter. What mattered was that he was still waiting. His eyes darted to every passing car, every silver sedan that remotely resembled his family's. But each time, disappointment settled deeper in his chest. They hadn't come back. They weren't coming back. The realization sank in like a heavy weight, pressing down on his heart. His stomach rumbled, but he barely noticed. The hunger was nothing compared to the emptiness inside him. Then, a new car pulled up, a dark blue truck, its tires rolling to a stop near the pump. The driver's door swung open, and a man stepped out, stretching his arms as he took in the crisp morning air. He looked rugged, dressed in a thick jacket, his boots scuffed from long days on the road. His eyes landed on the retriever. The dog didn't move. He was too tired, too lost in his own sadness to care. But the man, he noticed something, the way the retriever sat, unmoving, his head slightly lowered as if he had lost all hope. The man's brow furrowed. He glanced around the station, searching for an owner. But no one seemed to be looking for a missing dog. No one seemed concerned. With a sigh, he stepped closer and crouched down, extending a hand. "Hey there, buddy," he said gently. The retriever's nose twitched, catching the scent of leather and motor oil. His ears flicked, but he didn't lift his head. He wasn't sure if he could trust again. The man stayed still, not forcing anything, just letting the retriever decide. "You waiting for someone?" he asked, his voice soft. "Or are you all alone?" The retriever didn't answer, of course, but the way his amber eyes flickered with sadness was enough. The man sighed again and reached into his truck, rummaging through a small bag. Moments later, he pulled out a sandwich wrapped in paper. He unwrapped half and held it out. "Bet you're hungry," he murmured. The retriever's stomach growled at the smell of food. Hunger gnawed at his insides, but hesitation held him back. Was this another trick? Would he be abandoned again? The man didn't push. He simply sat there, waiting, just as the retriever had waited all night. Finally, cautiously, the dog took a step forward, then another. His nose brushed against the bread, then his tongue flicked out, tasting it, warm, fresh, safe. And in that moment, something changed. For the first time since being left behind, the retriever didn't feel invisible. Someone saw him, someone cared, and maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something new. The man watched quietly as the retriever devoured the sandwich, his mouth moving faster now, as though the hunger had been building for days. His tail, which had been tucked between his legs, started to wag slightly. It was a small movement, barely noticeable, but it was there. The man smiled softly, feeling a tug in his chest. He had seen that look before. It was the look of an animal who had been left behind, abandoned in a way that left a scar deeper than any wound. And it hurt, but he wasn't going to leave him like this. "Come on, boy," the man said, his voice gentle. "Let's get you some help." The retriever paused, looking up at the man. His eyes, still wary, still unsure, studied him for a long moment. Then slowly, he turned his head toward the road, as if waiting for the silver sedan to come back. But the road remained empty, silent. No cars, no family. The man sighed, standing up. He turned toward his truck, opened the door, and glanced back at the dog. "You can stay here if you want," he said, "but I can't promise anyone's going to come for you." For a moment, there was no response. Then, with a soft whine, the retriever stood up, his legs a little shaky. He walked toward the truck, his pace hesitant, his eyes never leaving the man. "Attaboy," the man murmured, kneeling down once again. He scratched the retriever behind the ears, offering a comforting touch. "How about a ride? No more waiting. We can figure this out together." The dog's amber eyes were full of confusion. Yet there was something else too, a flicker of hope. Slowly, with careful steps, the retriever approached the truck, his nose twitching at the new scent. The man opened the passenger door and gave the dog a space to climb inside. For a second, the retriever paused, unsure. Then, with one last glance at the road that had taken his family away, he jumped up, landing softly on the seat. The door clicked shut behind him. The man smiled as he started the truck. "Let's go, Rusty," he said, his voice low, almost to himself. Rusty. It was a name the man had decided on the spot, as if it had always been meant to be. A new start, a new chapter. The truck hummed to life, and Rusty, for the first time in what felt like forever, relaxed into the seat. The road ahead stretched out in front of him, a fresh path, one he would walk with someone who wouldn't leave him behind. The man drove slowly, glancing over at the retriever. Rusty's golden fur glowed in the early morning light, his eyes still watchful, but no longer as lost. He rested his head against the window, looking out at the passing landscape, and for the first time, in what felt like a long time, he felt something he had forgotten. Safety. There was still so much to figure out, so many unknowns, but at least now he wasn't alone. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. Days turned into weeks, and the golden retriever, now named Rusty, settled into his new life with a comfort he had never known before. The man, whose name was Oliver, wasn't just kind. He was patient, understanding. He didn't rush Rusty into anything. At first, the dog slept close to the door at night, his body tense, as though expecting someone to come take him away again. But Oliver never pressured him. Instead, he let Rusty take his time, letting him adjust to the new sounds and smells, the feeling of a roof overhead and a bed to sleep in. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Rusty trotted beside Oliver through a field, his golden fur brushing against the tall grass. Oliver's boots crunched the earth beneath him as he walked with slow, steady steps, glancing down at Rusty every so often. The dog was happy. His tail wagged freely now, his body relaxed, and he even bounded ahead to chase a butterfly or two, his eyes sparkling with joy. There were no more anxious glances toward the road, no more waiting at the windows for a family that wasn't coming back. Rusty had found his place, and that place was with Oliver. But it wasn't just the big things that changed. It was the small, everyday moments too. Rusty began to trust again. The way he would lay his head on Oliver's lap while they watched TV. The way he would nudge his hand when he needed attention. The way he would snuggle close at night, as if to say, "I'm safe now. You're not going to leave me." It wasn't just a physical home Rusty had found. It was the peace of mind that came with knowing someone cared. Someone would never let him down. One morning, as Oliver sat on the porch, drinking his coffee, Rusty lay at his feet, watching the birds flutter about the yard. The sky above was clear and bright, a perfect day. Oliver leaned down to scratch behind Rusty's ears, his fingers finding the familiar soft fur. "You know," Oliver said quietly, "I've had a lot of dogs in my life, but you're something special." Rusty looked up at him, his golden eyes soft and trusting. It was as if he understood every word. "You're home now," Oliver added, his voice filled with warmth, "and I'm not going anywhere." In that moment, Rusty's heart swelled with a feeling he hadn't known in so long. He wasn't alone anymore. Rusty wasn't just a dog left behind at a gas station anymore. He was part of a family that would always love him, protect him, and never walk away. As the sun set that evening, the two of them sat together, side by side, watching the world drift by. It was the kind of quiet, peaceful moment that Rusty had longed for, the kind of moment he would now have every day for the rest of his life. Because now, he was truly. Some stories don't end with abandonment. Share this one with someone who believes in second chances and the power of kindness.